Hello, friends, and welcome back to APIs You Won't Hate. My name is Mike Bifulco, one of your co-hosts of the podcast. For once, I am hanging out with two of my favorite people in the world. I've got Phil Sturgeon and Alexander Karan on the line with me. Alex, how are you?
Yeah, good. Tired.
Yeah, doing.
I'm fully convinced.
Yeah, same trouble here. I was out flyering for a charity crowdfunder all yesterday, and in the morning we started in the coffee shops, and in the evening we got to all the pubs. So I was very hyperactive and then very hungover.
I think of all the things I do, this is the most challenging to schedule. Just in case someone listening is new to this experience, I am on the East Coast in the US. Phil is usually somewhere in Western Europe, and Alexander is in Australia, which means we are basically spanning the globe, which is why we only catch up maybe once a year. Man, it is really, really nice to see you both. I actually cannot think of the last time I've been on a call with the two of you at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time. I mean, I've spoken to Phil separately and Mike separately, but never together.
Yeah, now that you've seen us both in the same room, you can tell we're not the same person too, which is kind of wild.
I mean, it's similar.
I'm interested in hearing what you've both been up to.
Okay, so let's start what's keeping me busy outside of work.
Sure.
So I've been looking for a new hobby recently, and because that's what you do when you're in your 30s.
You're trying to select your character class, right?
Yeah, that's it, right? But for middle age, get ready for middle age. So I decided to get really into coffee, and like now I work at big tech and get paid a bit more because I'm not looking for a startup anymore. I decided to go like the full whole hog and like spend like a small used car amount of money on like a proper barista coffee machine at home, a grinder, like all this special equipment. And then and like I'm just making like really great espressos and cappuccinos in the morning now and getting like freshly roasted coffee. And then there's like that little nagging voice in the back of my head that's like, climate change is affecting the amount of area we can grow coffee. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a time limit on this hobby.
Yeah, right. Are you going full fancy and getting the beans that have been passed through a spider monkey or something, or what's your favorite choice of bean?
So so I'm in the west coast of Australia. Just had to double check that for a second. So it's actually quite small, but we actually have like a ridiculous amount of like specialty roasters. Like for some reason we have lots of specialty roasters, lots of gin distilleries, lots of breweries, like all these fans, chocolatiers.
Not much else to do out there, is there?
Yeah, just eat and drink. That's it. So yeah, I joined this coffee club and they like send you freshly roasted coffee every 4 weeks from like different places.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just experimenting the most. That's my personal life is I've become one of those like pretentious people that's like takes 10 minutes to make a coffee and like, it's cleaning the machine and yeah, but it's fun. It's fun. So, and it's meditative.
I like that we've gone on a similar journey, but mine is such a dumber, smaller version, which is I have finally decided that I'm bored of instant coffee, and I decided to treat myself to an AeroPress Go, like the travel one. But I've had it for like 6 months and I've never got it out of the box. I've just still got like a massive jar of instant coffee. Because my theory was like in the van, I can take it bike pack in, I can I can keep it in the van. I've got a little hob and a little stove and stuff, so I can boil water in the van and then I can pour that over. But the problem is I don't get through enough van coffee that I can justify buying a whole bag of ground stuff. I'm gonna have to like buy myself a little grinder, and then I'm just there like, do I want to spend 10 bloody minutes in this random Tesco's car park like grinding a coffee
You do.
like a psychopath?
You do because as I get into this hobby, you grind fresh. That's how you get the best taste, right? Like you just
Yeah.
but
I also,
AeroPress
before I
is
got the
great.
hob, I had a Kelly kettle. If you've heard of those, like the little, you put like little twigs in this. It's kind of like a rocket stove. You make a little fire, and the water is stored in the chamber around the outside, so the fire boils the water. And so I used to be like sat in a car park or wherever the hell I was sleeping last night, a random lay-by on the side of the motorway, just like wherever, and I'm there just making a fire with everyone going by. Like, what is this psycho doing? So then the whole process of grinding just felt like a little bit too much on top. By that point, I was like, it's taking me 20 minutes. I've got some boiling water. I'm putting some bloody instant coffee in there. But yeah, if you actually are a normal human being with like a house and a space to put things, you can get pretty nice for your coffee.
Yeah, but I didn't used to be into coffee until I moved into Australia. Like when I moved here, that's when because they're really into coffee here. They're like really into literally just like really good food. It's because all you do is chill out in the sunshine and like eat and
Right.
drink and have a good life, right? Like that's kind of what Australia is all about. Like it's not really about doing anything else. So yeah, that Australia got me into coffee, and now working at big tech has given me the funds necessary to really get into coffee.
All right. I like that. So I like that you picked that as your hobby. I've not really considered coffee as a hobby before, but
I feel
brilliant.
like I have to say that now with the level of effort that I
Yeah,
put
okay.
in, right? Like that's why.
Right, you-
Yeah.
Similar money could have got you like a kayak and all the gear, or like a pair of skis or something. But if it's up in that ballpark, then perfect.
Yeah, Alexander, I'm so excited to hear that. Now that you're part of the club, I can show you the secret handshake and all that.
Oh, so you're one of those too. Yeah. I found a few
Oh,
with
goodness,
Atlassian.
yeah. So I'm very similar to you. I didn't actually drink coffee until a few years ago. Like, just never bothered. But somewhere around starting my first startup, due to something my co-founder Sean said to me, I started drinking coffee because he told me that successful startup founders tend to be early risers, and that just like burrowed into my brain, and I was, up earlier and earlier as a result of that. However, it's gone very far from there, and I've come to understand that I really only enjoy espresso for the most part. So I make myself an espresso every morning. And when COVID hit the US and I sensed that the world was shutting down, I took my coffee budget for the year and I bought an espresso setup for home.
Nice. You went prepper, but for coffee.
Big time, yeah.
I've got 20 years of coffee in the basement. No one's fucking getting anywhere near it.
That's right. I've got the spreadsheets to prove it, and I've been tracking my expenses with it ever since. And I'm happy to say that as of about the beginning of this year, it's now technically paid for itself. And the amount of money I've saved by not buying coffee in coffee shops. I haven't stopped doing that, but I also, I'm drinking additional coffee. So yeah, we'll have to spin up the Espresso You Won't Hate podcast next, Alexander, and we can go ape on that.
For me, it's more of a capitalist thing, right? So I'm traveling about all over the place and I'm going up and down in my van, and I love just like, I've made a few coffees. I got a little bioethanol stove that I made out of like a cut a cider can in half and like converted that into, you can make them into a little stove. And so it's bioethanol, so it comes from plants, super efficient. And yeah, I literally just made coffee on a bench at a service station near Scotland somewhere on the border of Scotland. And I was like right outside the Costa with people coming in and out buying their plastic cups full of shite. And I was just like, big middle fingers up the Costa. I'm just making it was still instant and it was a bit shite, but I'd rather have a shite instant coffee than give, what is it, Pepsi that own that? So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, Costa's not that good. What is it? It's
No.
£4 now for a coffee at Costa? Wow.
It's something ludicrous. I'm like, at this point, I might as well be getting a pint. I know it's 8:30 in the morning, but I'm just going to buy a pint. It's the same price.
Wow.
That'll wake you up.
Yeah. That's more expensive than it is here. Like that's even with the exchange, that's crazy. Wow.
Anyway,
So
you have a bike in the
Yeah.
background, and I'm excited because
I
you
do.
have been on a maiden voyage. You want to tell me about that?
Man, yeah, it's been a whole journey. If you've listened to past episodes of this thing, you'll know that Phil and I probably met originally because of our sort of overlap of tech stuff and cycling. But
No.
that's the thing, yeah. And it's genuinely been about 2 years since I've been able to ride.
Oof.
I've been dealing with a hip injury since 2018, and 2 surgeries
Brutal.
and a whole lot of MRIs later, and a bunch of physical therapy and all those other things. I've finally just started riding again. And I am hesitant to say I'm back to fighting strength because I'm definitely not, but I'm like able to get out and tool around a little bit. And
Yeah, that's good, man. That's got to feel real good.
it feels really, really good. Yeah, it's definitely been cool to see. It sits behind me as a reminder while I'm on work calls that I need to go do that more. But yeah, it went from like actually not being able to finish one pedal stroke in April to being able to get out and ride 10 or 15 miles at a time now, which is just life changing
good.
for me. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mental
That's
health
incredible.
part of life balances out a lot from that. I was relegated more or less just to walking around the neighborhood, which is nice. It's great. It's just not the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's another one of those
Yeah.
situations where like you can just casually make number go up. Like you don't need to worry about like busting out cheeky centuries straight away. Like you don't have to do 100 miles right now. Like you can just go and do 10 and then 15 and then 20 or maybe smaller increments, but you get to see number go up and that just is progress again. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
The difference between like 0 miles and 10 is fucking infinite, isn't it? So now you just got to edge it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's great riding a bike. It's just, because you can go so far, you can do so much, and I think also the best thing is when you've got a good bike, you can also like, just like hardly ever use a car, like just bike everywhere. It's great.
It's one of very few things I do that occupies all of my limbs in a way where I'm definitely not like pulling out my phone to distract myself.
Handlebar mount will fix that for you. You can get it right up there on the top. You could be tweeting and driving. Real dangerous.
Not something I'm looking to fix. Yeah, it's really nice.
so
Like I throw my phone in my pocket and don't think about it until I'm back home,
Yeah.
which is also a massive feature too, you know? Yeah, man, I've missed it. I'm happy to see. Phil, what's your life looking like as far as that all goes these days?
Absolutely mental. I currently am not riding as much bikes as I would like. I did a few nuts ones a month or 2 or 3 ago. I did UK to Zurich, which was a good laugh. And yeah, that one was 450 miles in 4.5 days to get to a conference. So that was
Wow.
a good time.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was a bit rough. Every single day I was dealing with headwinds, mostly uphill because I'm going to the Alps from the sea, right? It was pretty much consistently up, headwindy and wet, and some days were worse before. It was pretty wild. But I lost my rain jacket on with a day and a half to go. And as I was like cycling through Alps, it was just pouring down with rain. It was when Switzerland had those really bad floods where like entire towns were getting washed away. And I'm just cycling around in like my hoodie that was just soaked through and just shivering.
Man.
And I was like, well, if I get cold, I'll just pedal harder. Problem solved. And then like the sun would come out for a few minutes and I quickly hang my hoodie up to let it air dry and then get some sun. And yeah, it was just nuts. But
You didn't get ill from that, did you?
I'm generally ill of something, but that's just because my life is madness. I mean, the main thing I've got going on right now is my charity is buying 70 acres of land in Bath, which is actually where I'm from. One of the two accents I flip between is the Bristolian West Country one and the rather posh Bath accent that falls out now and then. But I'm from Bath, and it's really exciting to be working on buying some land where I'm actually from, because the previous sites, like people in Cornwall, don't really like it when someone from not Cornwall buys some land. And people in Wales really don't like the English buying up Wales. But now, if anyone says, what the heck do you think you're doing buying this land? I'll be like, I'm from here, shut up. And we're doing a crowdfunding, which is £50,000. And I've been banging the drum for 6 weeks, but we're now at like £48,000. So it's probably gone over while I'm talking to you right now. We're basically done, and that feels absolutely amazing.
Wow. That's incredible,
Yeah,
Phil.
fantastic.
Can you give a little more details on the charity? Like how long have you been doing it? What have you all done? And how many trees have you planted and how much land have you now confiscated for the earth?
Yeah, complicated for the earth. I am going to Google my own charity in one moment. But so basically, Protector has been going since the end of 2020. So it's 4 years, and we planted like 4,000 trees in our first year. And then like we've got up to 100,000 trees after 4 years. So there's a big number go up. And we are hoping to plant another 100,000 this year. So the growth is exponential, but we've basically outstripped all of our existing funding partners, which is wild because we used to be in a position where we had more people trying to pay for trees than we had places to put them. And now we're the other way around. So it's a bit wild, but we started off by just planting. There's, a couple of farms nearby that had some corners they weren't really using for food production, and they thought it would be nice if we wilded that up. And now we've gone to much bigger stuff where we're literally buying our own land and still working with landowners and doing the sides of motorways and hotel grounds and working with councils to plant mini forests in parks and all these amazing things. But really exciting when we get to buy our own land. And we've got 70 acres of ancient woodland that we're restoring to a temperate rainforest in Cornwall. 70 acres that we own in Wales that's kind of degraded, kind of sheep blasted hillside. And even the sheep farmer there said this has been overgrazed. Like when sheep farmers are saying this has been overgrazed, it's having a rough one. And we're reforesting that. And another 27 acres that we're leasing, which is a bit of an experiment in like trying to find a huge amount of money just to buy the land and then start to do some work is a bit silly. We can protect it forever, but it's quite an expensive way to go about it. But yeah, this experiment, leasing a small bit, doing all the work, sticking a covenant on the land that says, hey, whoever ends up with this in a few years' time, you've got to protect this woodland. And then we can shove off and work on something else somewhere else. So our land is going upwards. Yeah.
That is truly staggering. I feel like I bump into people often who know you, Phil, but I also bump into a lot of people who don't know you. And that is more challenging because I have to then describe you to them. Like, oh yeah, this guy who I work with, who I know, I've never met, and he lives in a van. He's smart, I promise, And it's like, I feel like if I had a headline that was just continually updated where it's like, the man has planted 100,000 trees and, reforested this many acres of land. Like, if you could just give me that tweet length thing updated every week, it would help my endeavors a great deal.
Actually doing something about climate change.
Yeah, know a thing or two about climate change. Yeah, I mean, like, currently getting in a fight with like the Dale Vince, who's got like a net worth of 107 million or billion, I don't even know. It's just this like really rich dude that runs a major energy company, and he's like, oh yeah, heat pumps are bad. We don't need heat pumps. We can just like turn 70% of all of England into like hay fields and then collect that to make biogas, and then we've got vegan biogas that can power all of our homes. And I'm like, this is obviously completely insane. You're just lying about heat pumps to sell more vegan biogas. So like, I'm just, trying to educate people about the climate crisis and do a bunch of tree planting, because the trees that I plant are somewhat pointless if emissions keep going up. I don't want to, capture some carbon from the increase of terrible things that are happening. I want my trees to be sucking up, atmospheric carbon as line go down on how much we're producing. So trying to get that balance right.
Yeah, it's. I think that's difficult anywhere, right? Like, in Australia, we have like our emissions per capita is incredibly high, like per person for such a small population. But also, like, we export so much fossil fuels. And Woodside, the company that I shouldn't name, but I'm going to anyway, like in WA, they're like, no, gas is the future. We need more gas. And I'm like, but you sell 95% of your gas offshore. We don't need the gas. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing in the UK with the British government, the previous government. It's now been deemed that the previous government handed out North Sea licenses illegally. Like, they were unlawfully handed out because when they did their like emissions estimates, they forgot to take into account the burning of the gas they were producing. They're just like, we stuck some solar panels on top of the drill, so it's basically carbon neutral. They're like, yeah, but what about when you burn it? They're like, don't worry about it.
We do that too.
Instead of the new government like immediately ripping up those licenses and saying, it's been left to a charity conglomerate to take the government to court to try and get those licenses revoked. And at least the Labour government said, okay, we choose not to fight this in court ourselves, but they're leaving it to the gas company to fight in court. They could have just said, not only are we not going to fight this, we're also going to just like unilaterally completely remove all of those licenses, but they don't want to do that. So that's something, but we all need to sort our shit out a whole lot more. And the answer isn't vegan gas.
We face an oddly similar thing in the US where, as we record this, like 14 days away from the presidential election in the US, and which means I get to hear a lot of politicians, chattering about everything under the sun. And the weirdest thing is hearing the left-leaning politicians in West Virginia saying, like, we love the coal miners. We need the coal mining industry. It powers West Virginia. But we probably need to get you guys like a Cisco certification or something just in case coal mining goes away. It's weird to hear them with a foot in both worlds for sure, but that's what they have to do to sell votes.
Right.
So strange. So we actually did something here with native logging, which I don't know why they don't extend to like the coal and oil and all that more aggressively. But like, we were like, okay, we're going to end native logging in these areas because we've got like incredible forests in Australia. Like, I cannot describe to you what the forests are like. Like, they put England's forests to shame. They're just, wow. Right. And like, we were like, you know what? We're going to put like tens of millions of dollars, into that community to help transition and bring other places there to transition. We gave them a time period to transition from the native logging. We set up forests that were specifically for logging. Like, I was like, why do we not do that in like the coal and gas industry? Instead, we're like, nah, it's part of the future. Let's do more. It's such a weird.
Well, the thing is, a lot of the messaging takes a really long time to break through and then gets like held onto for far too long, right? So gas was a bridge solution. We're past it. Like, if in the 90s and in the 2000s, people were saying like, hey, let's get rid of some gas and let's get rid of some coal and we can replace it with some gas. Yeah, 20, 30 years ago, that was absolutely the right thing to do. Sure, we've gone way too hard for way too long, and we forced it onto all these like developing countries that can't afford to pay for it. So they're screwed and they can't afford to do an energy transition. And we also refuse to lend them any money at a discount to help them do that. But it kind of was a solution for a while, in the same way that like biomass for a while was considered to be a good thing, where you're meant to be using like waste wood chip from logging and everything else. You use waste wood chip in order to shut down a coal plant and switch it over to biomass. And that was a great idea in like the 80s and the 90s and 2000s. But they're still building more of that stuff now. And so they can't get enough of it. So they're starting to do dumber and dumber things to get a hold of it. And they should just be getting rid of it. And people were going, well, all these experts back then said it was a good idea. It was back then. It's not then anymore.
Yeah, it takes a long time to steer that ship.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. And we've got states in Australia, like South Australia, it's got like the world's biggest battery connected to the electrical grid. They produce so much renewable energy that their bills are so much cheaper. Meanwhile, like the East Coast, where energy is also privatized, right? It's not state run, but also just very heavy gas and coal based. Like it's just the prices are through the roof as well. They're like, we need more. Yeah.
I've seen some really good things about Australia have like entire states, provinces, what are you calling them?
States. So yeah,
States,
well,
right.
States and territories. So
territories, right. Well,
yeah.
whichever, there's big chunks of Australia that are kind of, 90% renewable and aiming to be 100%. And some of them up to 60%. Like there's areas doing really well. And a lot of that without hydro, which is good because they were just flooding entire salt marshes, which is very clever.
Yeah, we do some good stuff.
They were doing really well, but then there's people saying like, oh, currently we've only got 50% of our energy being powered by wind, and that's why it's bad. It's like, well, you haven't built very much, and it's doing quite a lot. If you built some more, it would be doing more. Sounds like you want to build some more, mate.
That is it. So I'll do one thing in Australia's defense here, because I know people that like work at the energy companies. Like, there is so much land in Australia, like just so much land. And like, it's really hard to negotiate like with all those landowners and like get all the, and then also like all the lawyers that sit in the middle, just trying to make money off of like the negotiations as well. And it's real tough. It's real tough.
Yeah. Half the cost of any of those projects is just lawyer fees. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's just so big.
So this is maybe a good place to pivot to the next things I was interested in. So Alexander, last time you and I actually talked on the podcast, you were at Climate Clever doing climate things.
Trying to save the world. So Climate Clever got sold. And I mean, look, I'm not going to complain because, I ended up dating my co-founder. We, moved in together. We had a baby, life's great. So
dating has changed. It's complicated. You've got to set a company together now. God.
Yeah. Who needs dating apps when you can just date your boss, right? Like, I like to say she took advantage of me, but nobody cares when I say that. They just high five her for some reason.
I love that, man. Australia is different.
Yeah, it's the other way around. So, it was nice doing like community stuff and like having like a really good impact, like watching schools save money on their utility bills and reducing their emissions and using that money for like their library budget and stuff. And then we started working in businesses. So I was a little sad, like because we had some laws delayed in Australia that really affected Climate Clever. Like they kept pushing back the mandatory reporting and it just had such a shockwave on us. So the business ended up getting sold. And I just kind of felt really lost because it was so weird, like actually coding and having purpose. So I decided to do the middle life sensible thing and get a job in big tech. So I got a job at Atlassian. And the reason I took the job at Atlassian was because like, I figured they do the least evil, right? Like, out of all the big tech companies, like Jira and Confluence aren't really trying to kill anyone. So I thought, that's a good start. Yeah. Do I have to? Why would this Jira ticket close? I keep pressing done and I refresh it. It's still in progress, right? But, like they've got a good work-life balance, remote work, which is great. So I get to spend more time with my son. And they had this like interesting position open in FinOps, which, renewable energy actually falls under. Well, not renewable energy, but,
Yeah, the green team doing carbon accounting and
Yeah. So I joined FinOps. And so like I work on like improving code and architecture and infrastructure setups to, make our cloud spend more efficient. I also build tools to help teams across the company understand the cloud spend and their cloud usage. I'm also working on some projects with our ESG team to help teams understand the footprint of their services, which is pretty fun too. Amazing. So I still get to have that little bit of like sustainability. So like, yeah. And then like on the side, like I'm still teaching. So like I teach at a foundation called She Codes, which is all about getting more women into tech. So, I'm still teaching there. That's my like good bit for the community that I still do, like that makes me feel all happy and warm inside. But yeah, so like most every day is just like build more tools to help people understand costs, identify cost spikes. You know, API wise, like most, like our front end is mostly GraphQL. So like I deal with GraphQL when I'm dealing with user facing stuff, but like internally for our tools, there's a lot of REST APIs. And then like, which is good, like, cause it's all like the only downside, I really hope none of my colleagues hear this because I don't want them to hear me bagging on it, but like it is so much like Spring Boot and Java and
Mm.
Kotlin. Now Kotlin and Java aren't that bad actually. And I come from like Go and Node, so it's like it was a different
Right,
world.
right.
But like there's so much of Spring Boot that I'm just like, I want to love Spring Boot. I really do. Because sometimes it does things that's great. And other times I'm like, why are you making building an API so difficult? Why is documenting it so difficult? Like, I want to do, design driven development, but you're forcing me to do code driven development, like
Yeah.
there's aspects of it that make me sad.
I've
But
had really weird moments with that, like trying to get docs out of a Spring API because we work out a bunch of that, and it was like you had to use an annotation-based system. There was nothing else, and
yes.
you had to like run the entire application in order to get that open API out. There's no way to just be like generate, which all of the Node, all of the Go, all of the PHP tools, they all have that. Even even the annotation ones.
Yeah.
You just run a little command and it loads up just enough and does a little bit of static analysis, and it grabs that and chucks it in a file for you. But this is like, you need to set up a database so you can see what endpoints this API has, and absolutely fuck off.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm like, why hasn't this been added? Right? Like, because I'm used to like doing what you're saying, like design an API. I've got an open API spec that generates a lot of boilerplate for me, and then like in some of the Node and Go frameworks, it then takes those like JSON schemas for your request bodies and speeds up parsing as well, right? Like, and I just like I miss that so much. But yeah, I mean it's a pretty cool job. We get to do some fun stuff. Like there's scale issues that you just don't have unless you're a company Atlassian size, right? Like what one tiny compression change can like ramp up CPU usage in the millions, right? Like it's fun. And I'm like using TanStack query on the front for dealing with the REST API, which is like a really nice, beautiful way of just working with. And like, if you do the REST API really well, like you can just easily filter on stuff, great search.
Yeah.
It's just, that part's nice. But yeah, I miss being fully design driven because I feel like Spring Boot like really resists that. Like it's more code driven, which is the only thing that makes me sad API wise.
Which I think is a bit of a mindset of the average Java developer as well. It's like, why would I want to write some YAML when I could write a shitload of Java to do the same thing? And that's just how they think. And there's no changing their mind about that.
Well, it's funny because like Kotlin's come along and Kotlin's like, it's a beautiful language, right? Like it's, I've been writing Kotlin now for a year and a half. Honestly, one of my top 3 languages, fallen in love with it, right? And its mindset is so different too. You'd think that there would be a different mindset around that sort of stuff. But because like people still use a lot of Spring, I guess, which is still really more Java based, right? It's just, it's different.
For sure. I mean, it's one of the things I've been writing a lot for bump.sh, the API documentation providers. I'm writing a lot for them, which is nice to, they're hiring me to work on some really interesting topics. But we just did a piece kind of really taking a whole bunch of steps back and not getting stuck in the weeds on really nerdy, obscure open API things, but just being like, why is an API contract a good thing? And that was a fun one to write, of just like, this isn't extra work. I did another blog post on a similar vein, which was we don't have time to write API doc paradox, where you basically end up completely forgetting how your API works. And then a few months later, you just have to rebuild it because that team has moved on and someone quit and all of the documentation was in a random Slack channel full of GIFs now. And literally end up building a whole API to replace it instead of just looking at the docs to find out how it worked. So this is something that happened all the time at WeWork. People were on version 12 of something that was meaningfully exactly the same. Like doing stuff like that. I'm really hoping. It feels like trying to explain to people that tests are a good idea. It's like, they're not more work. This is something that you do once and it saves you time immediately and forever in more ways than you can think about, because you've got an API contract. You can use it for contract testing. You can use it for SDK generation. You can use it for these 1,000 things. But
miss contract
they don't want to
testing.
hear it. Yeah.
I miss contract testing so much. It's the best type of testing. It's so good. It's so good. I miss it.
Right. Well, it's the most important thing for an API, because an API, like the I part interface, right? You want to make sure that your interface is actually doing what you said it would be, not just doing random whatever it feels like, and not just changing every now and then. Like if you don't have contract testing, you don't have an API, you have some random shit on an endpoint somewhere. Like that's not helpful.
I'm going to go to work tomorrow and say that. Look, guys, Phil said this is just some random shit on an endpoint somewhere. We need it.
Yeah. I've got this really cool thing. It's going to be amazing for our business. It's like when you call this URL and it does some random shit. That's cool, isn't it? No, that's not.
So Phil, what have you been up to?
Oh, heck. What have I been up to? So apart from all the charity stuff, I set up a splinter faction at API Days London. That was really fun. I was pestering Baptiste for like a free ticket because I'm broke and I run a charity, because I was actually going to be in the area and had plans to meet some people. And he's busy running a massive conference and didn't get back to me. And then the other organizer was like, oh shit, Phil's around. We should have let him come. But I was like, whatever. I don't care. I'm just going to set up a little pub meet around the corner. And we got loads of people. There were like 20, 30 people came by, all the folks you'd expect to see. There was, the Bump team and Tom from Wiremock and Baba, some of the Smart Bear people, Frank Kilcommons, that was it. And Eric Wild, loads of really cool people, all just Lorna Mitchell. Loads of people just chatting away and having a nice one. So that was really good. I literally came in from the woods and I chained together every single free charger that I knew in all these like rural countryside pubs. And I was like sleeping over in a car park on the slow trickle charger so I could get all the way to London. And then just met them for a pint and shuffled off. That was really funny. And I liked that. But API stuff, like I'm doing a lot of writing at the moment, which works out really well for me, because I just get like, I've got a backlog of content that needs doing for Bump and for Speed, do little ad hoc pieces. Sometimes I like write an article and then see who would like it. So the Tim Perry for HTTP Toolkit, been doing a lot of bits for him here and there. And basically, it's just letting me write more content than I would have time to do for just purely APIs you won't hate. Because we have got a few paid subscribers and I love you guys. We could do with a few more. But yeah, I've just really been enjoying writing more recently. And I'm kind of using some of these articles to kind of ramp myself back up into building APIs you won't hate 2. Oops, I did it again, which is a working title, but I might go with the Britney theme.
It has been nice seeing you get back into writing so proliferately, Phil. I feel like one of the things that happens is there's like a network effect of you launching things into the internet where people start getting in touch about like ideas and tangential problems that they have.
Sure. I mean, as well, like Alexander, it's a lot of it thanks to you as well, because your newsletters are amazing and they teach me things. And it's really nice to kind of I'm not doing as much stuff, but I still am interested and I'm still trying to like teach people about things. And you seem to have your finger on the pulse a little bit more. So I quite often like read the newsletter and I'll be like, oh shit, I didn't know about that. That's really cool. And like, wow, that's a good article. Or where did you find that tool? Make sure we put it on our website. So it's really nice to see that. And then you're like constant, do we have any more articles yet? I'm like, oh, fuck, I better go write one. So you're keeping me on it as well.
The social pressure. Yeah.
That's a good way to be. It's a forcing function we needed.
Yeah. Got more to do about green tech in APIs as well, which I'll have to talk to you about, Alexander, because I did that like introductory to green software in general for Eric, but I made big promises that I haven't kept about talking about how API design can impact carbon. And a lot of it is just about like that article from Fastly about design your APIs to be more cacheable. I'm pretty much redoing that, but with a polar bear on it. But it is really about kind of, you can make your API run incredibly quickly and serve a lot of requests that shouldn't need to be made. And that's still, dumber than having a slightly less optimized API that you don't call very often. So literally just kind of set your caching up properly is a really big thing. And then of course, all the usual database optimizations that everyone needs to make. But there are things that we just don't think or talk about. And especially with the rush towards like JSON API, include all the things, and GraphQL, like let's fetch the whole bloody thing in one request. Like let's buy these massive uncacheable resources around all over the place and You want one more bit of data, you just load it all again, screw it. All of that mindset of the last couple of years has been a problem.
But it's architecture skills, right? Like this is also the thing that worries me with AI driven development or whatever you call it as well, right? Like writing an endpoint is easy, writing a database is easy, building a web page is easy, but like architecturing an API layer, modeling your data in a good way, that sort of like you only learn that from like experience and failures and read and like proper reading and understanding of why other people have built stuff a certain way, right? Like, and that's hard. Like, it's easy to build an endpoint and whack it all in there. It's hard to think about your resources and like actually split your API up correctly, put things on the correct routes, metadata, linking. Like, it's tricky. Like, you need to actually sit and think and plan and scope, and that's tricky.
If anyone would like to do that, I really enjoy those sessions. So I've been doing a few consulting ad hoc stuff here and there, 2-hour API deep dives, we call them. And yeah, I've had this conversation 100 times where someone is trying to plan their API. We had a university and we were saying like, right, what does your API need to do? And immediately they jump straight into the endpoints and should we use JSON API or Open API? Well, hang on. Let's not worry about what shape your data will take or how you describe that data. Let's back way up and like fundamentally, what was your API doing? And I managed to kind of say like, let's go through. Are you going to have one API or multiple? Like, what do these do? What is the style of API? Not even GraphQL. Like, fundamentally, is this a data-driven API where you're essentially plonking a generic database over the wire? Or is it like a use case-driven API where you're trying to guide people through a workflow? And I haven't even thought about that. And then it was, how many APIs do you need? And they were trying to make an API that was basically one API that had like teachers, students, organizational stuff, and some other bits. And those were going to be like, I guess, 4 different endpoints. And then like, depending on whether you were a user or teacher, it would show you some different embedded data. And it was all this like really weird, super variable stuff. Like based on this context, I might see that, but I don't have permissions to see this. I was like, whoa. Let's make this 4 completely separate APIs that have different scopes. So you've got like a student API that has my courses and my exams and all of the stuff related to me. And I can see some teacher information, but I can't see their home address and their phone number. Like you just make that be one thing for them. And there were lots of like individual resources and sub resources, and you could sign up for a course and all these little bits, and just kind of separating it out like that and having a teacher's specific API for all the stuff that teachers would need in their scope. And they had some similar but quite different resources, but they could all be perfectly cached. Because it's not like all weird and variable based on the scope of the access token. So trying to go through stuff like that is really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people just, so for me, it's like people are like, oh yeah, CRUD, that's API. I'm like, no, that's like, CRUD's not API. Or it's like, okay, well, we need this specific thing in our UI. So we're going to build this endpoint for it. And I'm always like, but how do we reuse that? Like, what's the actual resource? What's It's right. It's like people never take a step back and really think about it. And when you think about it, that's when the speed comes in. That's when the caching comes in. That's when the optimizations are. Actually, you know what? The optimizations are easy because they're obvious, because you've layered it well, right? You've designed it well.
Yeah.
I think it's a process a lot of people don't go through until they've felt the pain too. Right. Like I think in a weird way, a lot of developers spend a ton of time thinking about their edge based architecture and serverless stuff that will truly never be a problem for them with their, even thousands of users. You can get away with a small VPS, but it is really easy to get yourself into, I think the technical term is a data mess with your API, and something that deserves a whole lot more thought than people realize. And the more upfront, the better, because it's a hell of a lot of trouble to unwind once you've already built things on top of something that becomes problematic,
Yeah. I think the reason that it's hard for people is that an API is seen as a developer's job. Just like you might have to go and write some functions or design a form, it's kind of seen as like throw an engineer at it. And what does an engineer do? They want to write code. That's why API design first is so hard, because they want to write code, not YAML. But they're not used to stakeholder engagement, and like the fact that you need to like get 10 potential users or beta users or the front end team or whoever in a room and talk about their needs and don't even try and translate those needs into JSON structures immediately or endpoints straight away. But you need to talk about like functionally in human words, what actions are you trying to take? And then once I've got a list of what actions that we're trying to take, we can then start to kind of do a mind map diagram of how these concepts might relate. And then we can start to draw some boundaries around it about which APIs are which. And then we can start to talk about, okay, maybe we're going to talk about the resources and actions and endpoints that they might have. But that's like, day 3 of the planning process and not the first thing you do, which I'm at fault for. Like that's what the Build APIs You Won't Hate book says. Step 1, write down a list of things you want to do. Step 2, turn that into endpoints. No. Step 12, turn that into endpoints. You gotta update that book.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's the human problem. It's the human problem, right? Like it's like the hard part about being an engineer isn't writing code. It's like talking to people and planning and navigating multiple stakeholders and different people and bringing them together, right? It's always the hard part. It's never the code.
People are hard. Code's easy. I got an AI to write it for me now. Don't worry. Just do more code.
All right. So one other thing I wanted to get to before we wrap the record today is I feel like the internet has fractured itself in the past couple of years, where it's harder to find people online and harder to find the places to listen to people online. I personally have given up on Twitter quite a while ago and no longer use Twitter. I've been using Threads for about a year. And I found it pretty satisfying. It is, of course, another social network owned by another billionaire who is doing his best to humanize himself and whatever.
Yeah, but he did promise to punch Elon Musk in the face, which I support.
Yeah. And he's got a cool chain now as well. Like one chain and a fro, right?
He's got bling.
Yeah, human haircut. Yeah. I'm also, this week, I feel like I've heard a lot about the tech community kind of jumping over to Blue Sky. And so I'm starting
Kelsey
to dip my toes in
Hightower
there.
jumped over. Yeah, so Kelsey Hightower jumped over, and like the second he did, like I felt like everyone else. I mean, like he has a lot of sway, right? Like he's really big in the infrastructure space, and he's always really good at talking about things and being really open and like really focusing on fundamentals. So the second he did it, I felt like half of everyone, and I've been on there for a while, and all of a sudden it was busy, and like people were interacting with my own posts, and I was like.
Nice.
Because I'm still on Twitter because like I stay on there because some tech people are still there and I need it for the newsletter. Like
that's fair.
Yeah.
I still squat my account on Twitter, to be fair. Mine is marked as private so that no one can like create a new account under my name and do whatever garbage they're going to do. I just don't log in any longer. So it sounds like, smart. Alexander, are you active on Blue Sky? Is that primarily your spot on the internet now? Or are you?
Yeah, it's me and that on my website. And I guess LinkedIn. I've seen a bit of the tech community on LinkedIn, which is super weird because like in between posts of people like being real estate agents with Lamborghinis and houses, there's like how to structure a database and like all this other weird interaction. But yeah, mostly Blue Sky these days.
Yeah. And nice. Phil, what about you?
I'm kind of on all the things at the minute on Mastodon. I'm still on X just because I went back to paying for it. I was off for a month. I stopped paying for it for a month, but then like just black hold. And the fact that I'm trying to do a crowdfunder, you know what I mean? Like the more people see my tweets, the more money my charity gets. So I'm kind of locked in for a while, but I refuse to put the charity credit card anywhere near that jerk. I'm still on Twitter for now, riding out I'm trying to be king of the shit pile. But I'm on Mastodon, on Threads, and on Blue Sky. They all have slightly different feelings, but I like how much of the climate community and now I say tech community are getting over there.
I was going to say, I think we need to put APIs Won't Hate on Blue Sky. I feel like there's enough of tech Twitter over there.
Do you want to do it? I have so many accounts. God damn it. I was so excited to like close down a few accounts on Twitter for like the charity and for other places because we're like, screw this guy. I'm not doing 7 accounts on here anymore, but I can't handle anymore.
I'm happy to set it up if you want.
Brilliant. I just put you on the spot on live on air. But no, we should do that. That'd be good. And Mastodon, I quite like. It's still got this like really small community feel where like people I don't really know just like are super friendly and supportive and get really excited about the charity stuff and like volunteer and come help out. And it's just like I'm meeting new people in the village pub over there all the time. It's really nice. But I did Threads is such a dumb one. I felt like it got noticeably worse a month ago. But I posted a video of the SpaceX rocket landing itself, getting caught. And I put credit where credit's due. Elon Musk did a really good job of taking credit for this. And no one read it. No one read what I said. They all went, it didn't have anything to do with Elon Musk. Oh, no, he didn't do it. The engineers did. And like 150 people, like 3,000 likes, but 150 people just replied being like, I didn't read what you said and I'm angry. And I'm just, this is not the replacement for X that we need, is it?
Yeah. It's been frustrating. I'm definitely still going to be posting on Threads. I feel like I've found a small group of people there that I really enjoy learning from. And I'm trying to find people on Blue Sky. The process of starting an account with zero anythings is always like a little bit like, man, do I actually have the energy for this or not, you know?
So they've actually got this
really
cool
helpful.
list feature, like in Blue Sky. They've got like this cool list feature. It's like database expert that you can click the list and just press follow all, and it just like.
Yeah, it's a thing called starter packs that I started seeing, where
Nice.
I found the Ruby on Rails starter pack the other day and I started following it. You click one button and you get all of the people there. I need to find more of those and also find my way onto some of those so that I make some friends over there.
Yeah, an API starter pack.
Yeah.
That's a really good shout, actually. Yeah.
And it's just Phil.
What else do you need? What else do you need? That's funny. No, we should. That would be really good if we set up a Blue Sky. Then I'll help make a list of all the people what are cool, but we can go and talk to our friends at Women in APIs and get a bunch of them on the list if they're interested, because that will help people get started. Yeah, that sounds really good. Well, I was going to say there's the best thing to do as well is to get the like follower bridges. So Blue Sky just released a follower bridge where you can kind of sign in with your X account and then also your Blue Sky account, and it will kind of transfer the followers. So that really doesn't get you followers, but when people see someone they recognize come in, they go, yeah, and click follow back. So that's went from like 0 to 1,000 people on Mastodon in the space of a couple of weeks doing that, basically.
That's a solid idea.
Right. Well, the one thing I wanted to say is that we are taking a more concerted effort to do regular newscast, hopefully a bit more regular podcast. We're doing a lot more stuff, and there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, which is I would like to dedicate more time to doing more stuff. I would like to make more videos on whatever you ask us to do. I would like to do a lot more content for the premium subscribers, but we don't really have very many, and I can't take time away from the charity, and it just doesn't pay me and the client work in order to do 4 hours of recording a video for $9. So if a few more of you can sign up as a premium subscriber, I promise we'll get you a lot more cool stuff, and you'll support the content that we're already giving out for free for everybody else. So you should go to APIs You Won't Hate. There is a smash that subscribe button, and you just click on paid, and it's like a couple of bucks a month. I don't know how much it is, but it's not very much.
Like Phil said, he'll do whatever you want. So
API OnlyFans coming your way for no one that wants that.
That's hilarious.
Disgusting. Please end the podcast now.
Well, listen, both of you, it was fantastic catching up. On that extremely strange note, I will have a link in the show notes to our Only Phils, where you can find everything you want about APIs You Won't Hate. I'll drop as many links as I can to everything we've chatted about here and get this published soon. And the three of us ought to do this more often. I'll put my hand in the air as saying I'm going to try and organize the next one of these around the beginning of next year. So please catch up in early 2025 for a shout. And if you're listening to this, please share the podcast with a friend. If you know someone who's interested in APIs in our world, we'd love to hear from them. We'd love to meet you. Chase us down on the socials. You'll find links to the mess of places that we just talked about in the show notes as well. Until next time, thanks so much for listening to APIs You Won't Hate. Alexander, Phil, thanks so much, dudes.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks.
See ya.
Bye.
That was a podcast.